The phrase everyone owns quality sounds really empowering until you realize what it's actually saying is that no one is accountable. In this video, I wanted to break down why this idea of everyone owns quality is flawed. If it's your first time tuning in to Let's Combinate, I'm your host, Subhi Saadeh. I'm a quality professional working in medical devices and pharma for the last decade. I use this show to answer questions that I'm curious about and talk about topics that I'm really interested in. So if you like the show, please subscribe, like it. It really helps out. I'll never forget outgrowing this belief of everyone owns quality. I was working on the first quality manual I had ever written, trying to understand quality policy, responsibility, and authority, the management rep, and how to document all that. And I came across Joanna Gallant's article, Someone, Everyone, or No One, Who Owns Quality and Who Should? And I just remember sitting and reading through the article and thinking, I can't believe how much sense this makes. What motivated you to write that article?
I was part of a team of consultants that got brought in to build up this site that a company in Europe was starting up in the US. They wanted to pull together a site that had a very good quality structure when it launched. Their thought was hire a bunch of consultants to come in and build us all of these processes that we need, because the consultants should know what the processes are and what they require, and then hire the people to learn these systems as they've been built by the experts who built them. You can sometimes feel in the air in a facility, whether it's a good or negative energy. This particular facility was crackling with positive energy.
Oh.
The quality culture was phenomenal. I thought, why aren't all companies like this? One of the things that came up was this concept of who owns quality. Thought back to the different environments I had been in and how people approached quality ownership, but also back to that ICH Q10 example where we don't really have anywhere in the regulations that people would be exposed to this idea that there really does have to be an owner, and it's not the quality organization itself. They're responsible for it, but ultimate accountability belongs to management. It's sometimes hard for people to make the distinction between ownership elements at what level and with who. I had a training session that I gave one day, and I had people coming from two different parts of the facility, the manufacturing folks from both buildings. They kept themselves separated. So one building sat on one side of the room and the other building sat on the other side. The quality guy for the second building comes in, and those folks were like, "Hey, Joe, come over here. Come sit with us. Good to see you. Glad you could be here. Nice to see you today." The guy's talking back and forth with the manufacturing folks, and the person from the first facility came in. And it was a totally different reception. It was like, oh, the quality guy's here. And the quality person sat on the other side of the room. And it got me thinking, when I asked the question, who owns quality? It's this very nebulous concept, but it plays out in so many different ways. What's the responsibility? How do we make it work? How does it work well? And then even to the point of the example in the article where the person is sitting with the FDA is told, here's an affidavit that you are responsible for quality conditions in this facility, to the head of production. And the head of production says, no, I'm not. So when you put all of those together and the trouble people were having, the opening piece in the article is the quiz question I ask when I do training. It loops back around to that at the end. So it's putting all those pieces together about what do you expect to see? How do people act when they understand that quality is their responsibility? What are the things that they do and say that give you indications that they get it or they don't get it? Yeah. What triggered me to write it was in that facility that made all of these other thoughts jump into my head that I coalesced into an article.
The regulatory frameworks are clear. Quality ownership sits with top management, and they're really all pretty aligned, whether you talk about drugs and devices. ISO 13485 states that top management needs to provide evidence for their commitment to quality management system and make sure that there's clear responsibilities and authorities outlined. And in addition to that, it outlines the requirement typically in a quality manual where you have to have defined quality objectives. ICH Q10 says that senior management holds the ultimate responsibility for implementing and monitoring the pharma quality system. The FDA QSR 21 CFR 820 also talks about how it's a requirement to have a management representative with clearly defined authority over the quality management system. The pattern is obvious. Top management is accountable, but you may be asking yourself, Subhi, of all of the things that you can be talking about, you've covered topics from timid to Timbuktu in pharma and medical devices. Why are you focusing on this seemingly innocuous belief that everybody owns quality? Employees execute quality processes, but true ownership sits at the leadership level. And the idea that everyone owns quality is well-intentioned, but it comes from shared corporate responsibility or teamwork, or this idea of a company-wide quality culture and how quality should be at the forefront of everything that is done, kind of like in the same way that risk management is at the heart of everything that we do. The problem is that when accountability is blurred, when ownership is blurred, ownership gets lost. And one key distinction in ISO 13485 and 21 CFR 820, two words, authority and responsibility. And it's a key distinction because responsibility means ownership, and top management is accountable for making sure that compliance is in place and that they're meeting regulatory requirements and that they're driving towards their defined quality objectives. Authority, though, is different. Authority talks about decision-making power, and management can delegate authority, but can't delegate responsibility. In the same way, a sponsor company can outsource manufacturing, but they're still responsible for making sure that the product that's being manufactured or tested at a contractor is made to quality standards and that they're being compliant and that the appropriate levels of oversight are in place. Investigative journalist Catherine Ebon, who has been on the show before, talked through her experience of going through the Ranbaxy story. In her book, Bottle of Lies, Catherine shows how Ranbaxy's leadership deliberately disregarded quality to push low-cost generics in the global market.
I will say that the way that I uncovered the story of Ranbaxy is because I learned at that time that there was a Justice Department investigation of Ranbaxy. And that had been prompted by Dinesh Thakur risking his life and contacting the FDA with documents. And so I was able to tell his story in Fortune magazine in a 10,000-word article, which came out 2 days after Ranbaxy pleaded guilty to, I think, 7 or 8 different felonies in a Maryland courtroom. And all the felonies were related to their manipulating or faking quality data.
When the FDA started investigating Ranbaxy, they found unvalidated test results in their regulatory findings. That company falsified drug data, manipulated test results, and they covered up manufacturing violations for years, all the while continuing to sell substandard drug products in markets all over the world. They found manufacturing facilities where there was contamination with glass and particulate, and they also found out that management was pressuring their quality teams to fabricate compliance data. They did it at the expense of patient safety. Employees knew about the problems, but felt powerless because the company culture treated quality as not only an afterthought, but as a liability. Without a strong independent quality unit, companies don't just risk compliance violation, they may risk criminal liability or their business collapsing, but what they really risk worst of all is patient harm. The solution to this is just a shift in mindset. Instead of saying everyone owns quality, I think the more accurate statement is that everyone plays a role in quality, but leadership owns quality. A strong quality culture starts at the top, and to use the metaphor of a heart and pumping blood into a body, it's not the responsibility of a capillary to make sure that there's blood flow, it's the responsibility of the heart. The key is making sure that management responsibility is clearly outlined, that there's clear accountability through structured oversight, and that management owns the responsibility for the quality system, because if top management and the quality unit don't own quality, no one does.